And for more, I'm joined now by CBSN political contributor and Republican strategist Alex Conant in Washington. Alex, good to see you.
Yeah, good afternoon.
All right, President Trump is known for getting tough with people who attack or oppose him. We've seen that in the past. Will that strategy work in trying to convince conservative Republicans to sort of support the health care bill?
Well, first they're trying the carrot approach, which is they're bringing all these Republicans into the White House to meet with Donald Trump. They're going to go to they're going to go out, start traveling, as you saw Vice President Pence just doing there, to conservative districts and conservative states that Trump won, and trying to support the efforts in the House by being positive and encouraging the work that is being done so far and saying, look, I need you to vote for this bill because we're on the same side here. It's so far it's worked in the sense that they've gotten it through the two early committees this week. I mean, I think reports of its demise are way premature. It actually picked up some momentum this week, but the big challenges are ahead. The full vote in the House in coming weeks, where as of today, it does not appear that they have those votes. They're trying the carrot approach. It'll be interesting to see if at some point here they shift to a stick approach where they start going out and potentially attacking critics of the bill.
All right, the health care bill is facing growing opposition, including from medical groups. Mr. Trump and many congressional Republicans ran on the promise of repealing Obamacare. If this legislation fails, what's the potential political fallout?
It's dire, I would say. If this legislation fails, it calls into question Trump's entire legislative agenda. If they can't do health care reform, how do they do, say, tax reform? How do they do the infrastructure bill? All the other legislation, big pieces of legislation that President Trump has said he wants to do over the next 2 years. And beyond that, it also calls into question Trump's very reason for being elected in the first place. Recall during the campaign, he claimed to be this great negotiator, this great deal maker. If he can't make a deal on health care reform, I think it calls into question for that. So the political stakes for the Trump White House truly could not be higher at this moment.
And Alex, the House is expected to vote on the bill in less than 2 weeks. If it does pass, how much resistance will it face in the Senate?
Well, it's interesting. In the House, you're seeing a lot of resistance from conservatives who don't think that the reforms go far enough. In the Senate, you're going to see resistance from moderate Republicans who think some of the reforms go too far, specifically on Medicaid. They're in Kentucky today. Kentucky's one of those states where a lot of Americans received health care largely thanks to big Medicaid expansions. This bill would unwind some of that, and you see Republicans from states like Kentucky with Rand Paul, but also states like Ohio with Senator Portman and Colorado with Senator Gardner. You see these more moderate senators having concerns about the potential cuts to Medicaid and what that would mean for citizens in their states. So the challenges, while they are great in the House, are even greater in the Senate, because not only do you continue to have conservative criticism, but you're going to have a lot more moderate criticism. And the margin for error in the Senate is so much smaller. They only have a 2-seat majority in the Senate, so they really can't afford to lose many votes there.
All right, let's go and switch gears now and talk about the Russia investigation. A recent poll shows a majority of Americans feel an independent prosecutor should handle the review. What are the pros and cons of appointing a special prosecutor in this case?
Well, I think the pros would be that it would take the investigation out of the political arena. Right now, the investigation that most people are watching is in the Senate and the House, where the intelligence committees are doing the review. I think in coming weeks, there's going to be some open committee hearings on the ongoing investigation in the legislature. So the appeal, I think, of a special prosecutor would be that it would take some of the investigation onus away from politicians and members of Congress and put it with a career litigator, a career prosecutor who could subpoena the documents he wants before a grand jury. The obvious and very big con of a special prosecutor is that investigation would largely be done in secret. You would not in front of a grand jury, so you would not have public hearings like you will in Congress, and it will take months, if not years, for a special prosecutor to come forward with any sort of report. And so, for Americans who want to know right now whether or not the Russians interfered and how much they interfered in the campaign, and if there was any collusion between the Trump administration the Trump campaign and the Russians, which is the ongoing big, billion-dollar question here in Washington, I don't think that they would get answers very quickly from a special prosecutor compared to, say, the investigations going on in Congress.
We'll take some time there. Well, the House Intelligence Panel is holding their first public hearing on the Russia case on March 20th. FBI Director James Comey will testify, as well as several other intelligence officials. What can we expect there?
I mean, this is going to be fascinating because Comey really is at the center of so much of the drama surrounding the 2016 election. But we haven't heard very much from him, especially as it relates to the investigations into Trump and potential collusions and contacts with the Russians. And so this will be the first time that the American people hear directly from Director Comey on what the FBI is investigating and what sort of evidence they may have. Now, I think in all likelihood, Director Comey will not want to be all that forthcoming with members of Congress about an ongoing investigation. That's why he doesn't speak about it in public at all, because these ongoing investigations, they don't want to speak publicly about where they're at for fear that sources may react depending on the direction of the investigation. So it'll be very interesting to see how forthcoming he is with Congress. But at a minimum, I think for Americans that don't know a lot about what's going on, what the FBI is looking into, it'll be very revealing.
All right, Alex, let's go ahead and move on to another topic. It's been a full week since President Trump accused former President Obama of wiretapping Trump Tower. The White House still hasn't provided any evidence on this case. Has this hurt the administration's credibility moving forward?
Well, I think it's debatable how much credibility Trump had going into this week. Certainly, while his base believes him and supports him 100%, there's large swaths of the American public who think he lies all the time and don't believe much of what he says. But I do think that episodes like we saw this last week, where he had the tweets but then failed to produce any evidence supporting the tweets, and you saw other members of the White House staff trying to carefully walk back what he said, or at least not fully support what he said, it does further undermine the president's credibility. And I don't say this lightly, but I do think that we are close to a crisis of credibility when it comes to Trump and this White House. And that will matter when there is a big moment where the president needs to tell some hard truths to the American people, and the American people may not believe them. And so I think that is the long-term worry for this administration.
All right, and a final topic for you. It also comes out that former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn acted as a foreign agent for Turkey while also working for then-candidate Trump. Does that put more pressure on Republicans to sort of investigate his ties to Russia during the election?
Well, I think there's no doubt that Michael Flynn will be part of any investigation into Trump and Russia. I don't think that these reports from this last week that you just cited change that one way or the other. Again, Turkey is a NATO ally of the United States, and while clearly there should have been more transparency by Mr. Flynn and the White House and the Trump administration at the outset about his work on behalf of Turkey, I don't think this raises any really big flags, certainly not as it would relate to the issue of Russia possibly colluding with the Trump campaign.
All right, Alex Conant in Washington. Alex, thank you.
Hey, thank you very much.